Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel, and this video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours. We have lots of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first, we're going to talk about Putin. Yesterday, he gave a speech during the Valdai summit. Putin was talking about everything. He covered the most important questions. He covered most of the most important questions in the world. He was talking about Ukraine, about Europe, about France, about Shadow Fleet, about missiles, about a peaceful settlement of the conflict in Ukraine. So he covered almost everything. We will not discuss every single statement that was made by the president of Russia. We will talk just about the most important topics about Ukraine and about relations with the United States of America. Key points from Putin's statements on Ukraine. First, the tragedy in Ukraine is a shared pain for both Ukrainians and Russians, for all of us. Europe bears primary responsibility for the continuation of the conflict. For the West and their servants in Kiev, the Ukrainian people are nothing more than expandable material. The root cause of the Ukraine and other crises lies in the West's post-Cold War policies. Those who pushed Kiev into confrontation cared nothing for the interest of either Russia or Ukraine. The tensions between Russia and Ukraine are an inevitable result of the USSR collapse. Putin believes that the situation in Ukraine would have been different in a truly multipolar world. For the West, Ukraine is merely a card in a large geopolitical game, a tool to pursue its goal and profit from war. Russia is grateful to all countries that have made genuine efforts towards a peaceful settlement. Despite years of propaganda, changes are gradually taking place within Ukraine itself. And another important statement regarding the Tomahawk missiles. The supply of Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine would mark a qualitatively new stage of escalation in relations between Russia and the United States. The use of Tomahawk without American participation is impossible, the president said. At the same time, the possible transfer of Tomahawk missiles to Kiev will not lead to a turning point on the front in favor of the armed forces of Ukraine. Tomahawks are a powerful weapon, but not entirely modern. They were attackers, so what? We adopted and learned how to shoot them down. So probably this is the most important factor why the United States of America is not sending Tomahawk missiles to the Russian Federation, because generals in the United States of America understand that most likely sooner or later the Russians will begin bombing and will begin dropping them down, bringing them down, which means that the US will start suffering huge losses. I'm talking about reputational losses. Furthermore, if Russia find a solution how to bring them down, obviously this will strengthen position not just of the Russian Federation but also of Iran, of maybe Syria, and maybe China, and so on. So obviously nobody wants to reveal their own cards. Now let's discuss the situation in Ukraine. During the previous 12 hours, we received lots of very important updates. According to information we have, Russia carried out another massive missile and drone attack all over the entire territory of the eastern Ukraine. This morning, the pro-Ukrainian resources published this portal where we can see the approximate routes of Russian attacks. As you can see, Russia used missiles and drones. The Russians used cruise missiles and ballistic missiles and hypersonic missiles. But there is a very important difference between this attack and the previous attacks that were carried out by the Russians since the beginning of the special military operation. As you can see, the Russians attacked not just a city or two or three cities. The Russians attacked almost every single square kilometer in the eastern and the northeastern parts of Ukraine. If you remember, Russia several days ago attacked just the city of Kiev. A few days ago, the Russians attacked just three cities: Kiev, Dnipro, and let's say Odessa. So it's usually the Russia limits its targets during another missile or drone attack. But this time, the Russians attacked lots of targets. Probably dozens of targets were destroyed, and most likely the Russians were attacking energy facilities and the transport infrastructure of Ukraine. For example, during the previous hours, we got this video. Most likely, this is the consequences of another Russian attack. And here we can see that Russians destroyed some energy facility that was located along the railways. This most likely energy substation was used by Ukrainians with the purpose to supply this part of railway service for trains. But now this substation was completely destroyed, and this will bring significant problems to Ukraine, because we see that something big is brewing in the northeastern and the northeastern part of Ukraine, and we see that Ukrainians currently don't have any possibilities to bring forces fast. Furthermore, we got report that in Chernihiv, power cannot be supplied even according to the previously announced schedule of 3 hours on, 3 hours off. So the Ukrainians still haven't managed to restore energy supply to some parts of Ukraine, and we understand that the situation is going to worsen. Furthermore, according to information we have, the Russians during the previous night attacked the city of Poltava. The source reporting that at least 6 Iskander missiles were recorded. So as of the beginning of the 3rd of October of 2025, we haven't received lots of updates of what exactly was attacked by Russia. We believe that the Russians were attacking energy substations along the railways or something like this. We believe that during the 3rd of October we're going to get additional information, and we will discuss this later during the next update. Now let's discuss the situation on the ground, and first let's talk about the Zaporozhye direction, where the Russians continue their offensive operation. The sources are saying that during the previous 12 hours, the Russians improved their positions once again. Currently, the Russians are advancing in the direction of the settlement by the name of Uspenovka and in the direction of the settlement by the name of Poltavka. So the very heavy clashes are already taking place on the outskirts of these two fortified areas. The Russians are trying to break through Ukraine defense to cross the river of Yanchul and to capture these two territories. Furthermore, several pro-Russian resources reported that during the previous 12 hours, the Russians continue advancing further the west of the settlement of Verbova, and the Russians managed to capture this tree line that goes along the road between the settlement of Verbova and Vishneva. So currently, according to this pro-Russian report, the Russians are about just in several meters in front of the settlement of Vishneva, which is basically the biggest problem for the armed forces of Ukraine. The possible distance between the forces of the armed forces of the Russian Federation and Ukrainian units is less than 800 meters. So which means that in coming days, the first groups of the armed forces of the Russian Federation can answer the settlement of Vishneva, and the battle will start for this strategical settlement. If Russians are able to establish complete control over this territory, and we see that everything goes exactly in this direction, then the Ukrainians would lose their logistics completely, because from the territory of the settlement of Vishneva, Russians would cut R-85 road, Russians would cut supply and support of the Uspenovka and Poltavka fortified areas, and the Russians will begin offensive operation in the southeastern direction with the purpose to attack the settlement of Uspenovka from behind. So it's not just a difficult situation for the armed forces of Ukraine. We believe that this is already a disaster. This is a Zaporozhye disaster for the armed force of Ukraine. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the Konstantinovka direction. During the previous 12 hours, additional changes on the ground were recorded. Several neutral mappers and pro-Western resources reported that the armed forces of the Russian Federation managed to break through Ukrainian defense and to capture almost completely the settlement by the name of Kliban-Byk. So we are waiting for additional confirmation. I would like to remind you that the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation reported that Russians captured Kliban-Byk a long time ago, but later Ukrainians carried out a number of counterattacks that allowed them to restore control over the settlement, and now we see that the Russians are about to finish the battle. The Ukrainians soon will be forced to fall back further in the northern direction. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the Liman-Sivers direction. We have small changes on the ground. During the previous 12 hours, pro-Ukrainian resources published this video, where we can see how Ukrainians sent FPV drones with the purpose to clear the northern and the northeastern parts of the settlement by the name of Yampol. Here we can see how Ukrainians were FPV droning the edge positions of the armed forces of the Russian Federation on the territory of the settlement. So there are lots of episodes in this video, and 3 of them were geolocated. So based on this video, we have adjusted the northern and the northeastern part of the settlement of Yampol. So now we have no doubts that the Russians continue their offensive operation in this area, and that the Russians slowly but step by step increasing their positions and their foothold on the territory of this area. Furthermore, the sources are saying that the clashes for the settlement of Dronovka are ongoing. Now let's discuss the situation in the northern direction. Let's talk about the city of Volchansk. Today, pro-Russian resources and pro-Ukraine resources reported about significant progress on the ground on the Ukrainian side of the river of Volcha, on the Ukrainian side of the city of Volchansk. Today, Ukrainian resources published lots of videos of how they were bombing and attacking the industrial zones, the industrial areas of the city of Volchansk on the Ukrainian side, the most fortified territory on the city. And here we can see how Ukrainians were bombing and attacking edge positions of the armored force of the Russian Federation in this area. Based on this video, we have adjusted the map by coloring additional territories under complete Russian control. By the way, the president of the Russian Federation reported that there is no issues, no questions whether the Russians are able to capture the city of Volchansk or not. It's just a question and a matter of time. So it seems that the Russians are planning to finish the battle for this area also in coming weeks. And that's it for the short video. Military Summary channel reminds to condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.